wonder how hard it is to see this bearing behind here.
Oh, the bearing behind here?
Yeah,
hard.
The one that sounds horrible.
The people I watched, they said every time when people try to take them out and put them back in, they usually break it off. So
that's how you're supposed to take it out. You break it off.
No, that's how people when they try to take it out or put it back in. That's what the most common mistake is.
Yeah. Is it because they don't have the proper bearing puller?
Yeah.
Well, then I guess we should avoid doing that. There appears to be a cover
behind here. That once you get this off, you would be able to take the cover off and then expose the bearing, and then you just need an internal bearing puller.
Yeah, but how are you gonna put it back on?
How are you gonna put it back on?
Yeah.
Could put this in a press. Press it in that way. I'm sure there's a way to support this so that you're not putting so much force on this case and cracking the case. It's interesting how there's a separation here. This is actually like a separate piece.
Yes, it goes all the way down and goes right there.
So is that all part of that bearing carrier?
Yeah. It's a whole gearbox in there.
Well, I know there's a whole gearbox in there, but I mean as far as the...
That's an interesting sound. I'm more concerned about that crunchiness. Yeah, I think we should take this all apart and open it up. So, is this area inside here common to the crankcase? In other words, the oil for the whole thing?
Yes.
So all that rust and everything we see in here is probably in here too. That's probably why that bearing sounds like it does. Well, let's see if
Here's
we
the
can get
correct
this off.
size. Hey, no, it isn't. Must be a 19.
Great story. All right, I'm gonna find out whether or not this is gonna come off easy or not.
Just pull it back. Pull it back.
What?
Pull it.
I don't suppose you, from all the wisdom you've gotten, I don't suppose you know which way this is threaded on, do you?
Nope.
All right, I think it's regular thread. I don't think it's reversed. Whoops, wrong way.
Shouldn't be holding that.
Maybe it is reverse thread. Try it going the other way. Alright, we gotta figure out what that thread is because I gotta put a lot more force on it and I don't really want to feel like putting force on in the wrong direction. So that would be reverse. So this would be going forward right here. So if this is going forward, we want it to turn in this direction, and if we wanted it to tighten while it was going, then this would be tightening. So this should be lefty-loosey. And it is. Oh, ouch.
Make sure the spring's in there.
Make sure the spring's in there?
The springs that are in there don't flop out.
Flop out?
Plug your police scanner back in. Plug your police scanner back in.
Alright, so Aidan's going to remove these bolts. Hopefully they'll come out fairly easily so we can try and remove this back section and get a look at this bearing that's in there that sounds so horrible. Careful now.
No, just falling
Don't
on
drop
me.
that curb pop.
That wasn't that bad.
No.
That was
There's that one that looks really rusty on the bottom there. That's like,
this one too.
yeah, I'd say that one. There's one below that. Careful, don't go banging up that shaft. There's one right here.
I know, but there's one right here that's rusty.
It's that remnants of a gasket on there, huh?
Do you have to replace that?
Yeah. I think we'll just, you know what, we'll just RTV sealant that thing. We'll use silicone sealant, like gasket maker. Because we don't want to go through the expense of buying that gasket. I bet you getting that gasket alone is probably a major pain in the you-know-what. But I bet you it comes as part of a kit if you were doing a complete, like, big bore job or something. Is that even a bolt on the bottom?
I don't know. I said let's check.
It's a drain screw for the oil. See it right here?
Yeah, and then this. What's this for?
That's a good question. Looks like almost like another drain bolt. Oh, maybe that's a fill. Maybe this is, you know what? Maybe this is a drain and this is a fill. Maybe this gearbox is a separate.
Yeah, it looks like it.
You know what? Yeah, because this is the back of this casting.
Yeah.
This is a separate. Oh, that's cool. Okay, good.
That just got fun.
So, you know what we should do
What?
before we even take that cover off? Because it's going to make a big old mess all over the workbench.
Get a container.
Yeah, get a container. We should take that bolt out and see if we
I think
can
we already
drain
did.
that.
We already did.
Did we?
Yeah, outside. We took all of them out.
I remember taking the other one out.
We already did take that out.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's still going to be crap in there, I bet. All right, so the cover should, well, it's been on there for like its entire life. I bet you that's never been off.
It's not coming off.
Yeah, we're going to have to do the old, get a knife blade in there and try and... That would be awfully strange if they would have all these little bolts holding this cover on and then just all of a sudden put this one big bolt in there. Not that it's not possible. I still think that's a fill bolt. I think that the way that there's no dipstick on this back gear case. So I think the way that you know if there's enough oil in there is you drain the oil from here, and you put this back in, and then you take this out, and you fill oil until oil spills back out of here, and that's how you know it's at the right level. That's how a lot of gear cases are, and differentials. Which is why that's what I believe. And the fact that that's separating now tells me I'm probably right. Oh, look at the water. Well, it's milky oil. That's water and oil.
It's not doing it right there.
There might be an alignment pin in there. So when you put the cover back on, make sure everything lines up all right. All right, I would say that is probably, yeah, that's separated enough now that we should be able to put something in with a little bit more of a wedge. What may be happening is the whole shaft may be trying to come out with the
Bang this in.
with the cover. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. That's fine. We don't care about that.
It's soup.
I see rust on there. Yeah, and that bearing right there is toast. You can tell it's all rusty. See?
Yeah.
That's the bearing that we're hearing. These other two bearings actually look okay. So we'll show the people at home. Since we've been out of camera frame this whole time that we've been banging on this thing. So that bearing there is clearly all rusty, and these two bearings are surprisingly decent looking. Isn't that crustiness? Oh, spoke too soon.
Why?
That one's locked up. Can't even turn it.
How about the other one?
That one's okay.
You have any bearings that are the same size?
I won't know until we figure out what size these bearings are. So here's a little interesting design detail on this rear gear case. This area right down in here, which forms an oil bath for these gears and the bearings, is separated from this little chamber up here and this little chamber here. This chamber appears to stay dry, so when the gas gets in place and that's sealed, nothing gets in there. Or maybe not. We'll get to that in a second. I'll show you the other half of the cover. But what's interesting is this black thing right here is actually the remnants of where a breather line went through. So there was a rubber hose that came off of here. It's probably a vent. And what they probably did was they ran this up to someplace higher up so that if you went through some water, it would keep water from getting in to the crankcase. And the reason why they're probably venting this is for atmospheric expansion and contraction due to temperature change of the oil in the reservoir here. But the question is, well, how do they get the oil when it expands? How does that air get into or get out of this area right here and into this area? And the answer lies in the way that they designed the cover that I just took off. So this is the area that would cover this blind hole, and then this is the area that covers where this vent tube is, and you can actually see there's a little hole right there. So this is gasket material. Okay, so if we peel this off, we can actually look inside that. As far as my idea of using RTV sealant only, I guess that still could be a possibility. So I just ripped this open. So now we can see into this chamber here. And what you can't quite see is right down here in this corner, there's a little hole. Right under all this gross goop. So the light's not really good at the angle I'm at. But right here in the corner, there's a little, right there. Yeah, see the pieces coming out right there? So there's a hole right through, right there. So this is like a separate chamber. And I guess the idea is that as this expands, air will be able to push through that hole, get into this chamber, and then vent out through the vent. So this is kind of like a extra line of defense to keep oil from sloshing up and going out this hose. You can see the little black marks right there. That's where that little fitting with the hose on it goes. That gear's in excellent shape, so that's good news. And this number 8 on the gear faces out. A little note to ourselves for reassembly. This shaft with the gear on it looks like it's an assembly, just going into a blind hole in the back there, so I think we can lift that right out. I'm going to get a container to dump the rest of this funky oil into. Of the 3 bearings left in this half of the case, which are the output shaft bearing, this intermediate gear shaft, and this bearing here, this one is the only one that's still maybe good. This one sounds bad. This one is frozen. I could probably break it free, but why bother? There's a snap ring on this, by the looks of it. This whole assembly should be able to be knocked out with the bearing. Like so. Yep, that sounds horrible. Okay. That'll make changing that seal real easy too. Just going to knock the seal out from the back side. Let's see if I can get any numbers off this bearing from this side. Then I don't have to take it out right now. Yeah, it'd be too easy. Both of these bearings probably are marked on the back side. Well, this bearing I can see the part number is a 6204. That's a pretty common bearing. It's actually a lot easier to source and more common as a shielded bearing or a fully sealed bearing, but I don't want that because I want this to actually run in the oil bath like it's designed. So I need this kind of design bearing. I did find one on eBay. Interestingly enough, they're saying that it's a Baja bearing, DR150 Baja, so it's probably out of that's probably a Chinese, who knows, go-kart or something. But it's specing it as 20 millimeter ID, 47 millimeter OD, 14 millimeter width. So 27, 47, 14. 47, 20, 14. What did I say? Did I say 27, 47? Hope I just misread that. Yeah, 20, 47, 14. That makes more sense. So it's 20 millimeter shaft. Yep. That bearing is only $4 as a cheapie off of eBay. But I don't think I'm going to bother taking any of these bearings out or ordering any of these bearings right now, because since this gearbox is a separate sump altogether, there's no reason why I can't move forward. Aidan and I can actually put this engine back together and see if we can get the engine running before we put even dime one into this gearbox. Because, why spend the money on all these bearings and then find out that this top, that we're not going to be able to get that engine running.